Welcome back. It's Election Day in Colorado. There is still plenty of time for you to get out and vote. Your ballot must be turned into a drop box by 7 o'clock tonight, and there are hundreds of drop boxes around our state. Remember, you can drop it off at any location. We have an interactive map to help you find one near you on our 9 News Voter Guide here in Colorado. You can also register and vote in person at a polling center in your county. You can go to our 9 News website or our 9 News app. As of Sunday night, less than 20% of active Colorado voters had their ballot in. Given the low turnout so far, this morning we're talking about the impact of such numbers. Seth Masket is a professor of political science at DU. He joins us to bring some perspective to this. Seth, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So comparing this to larger elections like our last presidential election, is it normal for such a low turnout?
It's actually pretty typical. There's a huge turnout drive that goes along with a presidential or congressional elections. That's why we usually have between 70 or 80% turnout here in Colorado with those big national elections. With an off year election or an odd year election like we're having now, those are typically more in the range of like 30, 35%. The last similar election to this one in 2017, turnout was 33%. And we seem to be on track for something like that.
How does a low turnout affect the issues?
Well, it's more heavily driven by the sort of people who intensely follow local politics. When you have a lesser covered election, a lower turnout election, a smaller number of people can really make a difference in that. Those who show up tend to be a lot more knowledgeable about the issues. They tend to be a lot more passionate about them. There tends to be a little bit of a Republican turnout bias in these off-year elections. That is, the state as a whole has swung somewhat Democratic in recent years, but turnout in these odd-year elections tends to favor Republicans slightly.
And why do you think fewer people take part in these smaller off-year elections?
Well, they just don't get the same sort of national attention. A lot of people get their news, their political information from national news sources. To the extent that they're following local politics, they will get drawn to vote if they know if an election is close, if it's about sort of popular, understandable issues, if it's partisan, if it's following sort of big cultural divides. For the most part, the bills, the initiatives on this year's ballot are fairly technical. The language can be a little bit confusing. And a lot of voters have a hard time following those. Plus, it's, there's a few, contested school board elections, which a few people care about, but they just don't attract the same sorts of crowds that presidential or congressional elections do.
Right, right. And, does this serve as a type of indicator for future elections?
Well, it could. There are folks who are, more likely to, if you're trying to qualify something for the ballot, if you want to get a spending initiative on, if you want to get a more technical thing on, an odd year election might be a wise place to do it, just knowing that, not that many people will show up, that it'll have a slightly Republican lean to it, that the people who do show up will tend to do more reading than your average voter. So, it helps to sort of strategize a little bit, but it's also just, just the turnout is not particularly high. And if you're trying to do things to draw people to the polls, the sorts of things that we see this year don't necessarily seem the way to do that.
Still time, though, till 7 o'clock tonight. People can go and cast their ballots. Well, Seth Masket, appreciate you coming on our show early this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.